In episode 6, Perry has to get ready for court, but he does so gingerly because he knows that somebody is able to get into his apartment. So he goes out the back. Della, meanwhile, gets dropped off by Anita, and she actually suggests that the two move in together, which Della doesn't understand how exactly that would work because it is the 1930s. That sort of thing isn't really allowed, but she considers it, and she tells Anita, "I'll let you know." That day in court, the prosecution calls their final witness. It's a coin expert. But that coin expert wasn't supposed to be the final witness. They actually had a long list of witnesses that they were going to call, but the prosecution decided to rest, which is going to give the defense the ability to call their witnesses. Although this isn't a good thing for Perry or Della. They both were planning on the prosecution calling more witnesses, which would give them more time to form a defense. So they're going to have to rush things along. But Perry's mind is elsewhere. He can't stop focusing on the fact that somebody broke into his house and he doesn't know who they are. They're also still trying to figure out why the prosecution offered that deal. Della walks up to Hamilton Berger and tries to get some information out of him, saying, "Are you all right? I do care about you. You can trust me." But Hamilton just blows her off, telling her, "Good luck with your defense." Meanwhile, Paul was doing some work for Perry, delivering a subpoena to Holcomb, which he wasn't too thrilled about. But he also has to track down this car of the guy who ended up hiring Ozzie Jackson. And in order to do that, he's going to have to stake out the corner. And he's going to have to stake it out all day. So he enlists his brother-in-law to help out, paying him some money to sit in a car and just write down everything that he sees. Every car, every make, every model, and every license plate. If he sees it, he writes it down. They're going to work in 12-hour shifts. And hopefully, they'll be able to find this mystery person. It starts that night. And because it's so dark, Morris, Paul's brother-in-law, has trouble seeing. He writes down what he can, but he just can't make out every single detail that late at night. And when he gets home, Paul is not happy about it. It causes a pretty big confrontation between the two, with Claire siding with her brother because Paul's being pretty disrespectful to Morris in his own house. But Paul's realizing that if he wants a job done right, he probably has to just do it on his own. So he's going to head out that night and stake out the corner. Meanwhile, Perry gets to the office the next day, and he's surprised because there's Holcomb waiting for him. Holcomb wasn't too happy about the fact that he was subpoenaed, and he doesn't want to take the stand. Perry says, "You were Brooks's partner on the only gambling ship that hasn't burnt down. I'm not passing this up." And Holcomb says, "Yeah, I know. But the thing is, Brooks was into something big. Bigger than you, bigger than Berger. I just can't quite figure out what it was. I have all the puzzle pieces, but I can't figure out how they're put together. So I have to figure out how to make these puzzle pieces work for me." But Perry says that's not going to happen. This conversation gets really contentious until Holcomb collects himself and says, "Look, you want to make Brooks look bad, so do I. All I'm asking is that you come with me and see what I found." But Perry says, "No, I'm not going anywhere with you unless you give me something I can use." As this conversation is happening, Perry's apartment is once again getting broken into. Pete is trying to get into it, but Perry prepared for that, setting up a booby trap that really takes Pete's fingers out. I mean, they're pretty banged up. And also, one of Perry's neighbors ends up seeing him kind of lurking about, so Pete needs to get the hell out of there before the cops get called on him. He's not getting into Perry's apartment today. He's not going to be able to break into Perry's office that night because Della's there, until she gets a phone call from Camilla Nygaard asking her to come over. Della's a little surprised, but she does it. She heads over to see what Camilla wants. And Camilla's listening to some horrible music. But it's music that Della likes. So Camilla thought that maybe Della would appreciate it because Camilla has problems finding anybody who appreciates that crap. They start talking about the trial while Camilla smokes weed. They start talking about Perry and how the trial's been good for him. And then suddenly Camilla asks her, "Do you think I should fire Phipp, her attorney?" Which, that question just comes out of the blue. Camilla says to Della that he's been distant lately. He acts like he isn't, but he is. Della doesn't really know what to say, even though Camilla says, "I want your opinion." And Della tells her, from what I've seen, he appears to be pretty dedicated, and he also knows where the bodies are buried. Camilla then compliments Della, telling her that she's great to talk to, but swallows her drink and hands the glass to Della and tells her, "I want another one." Della awkwardly stands up to go get her one, but the entire interaction is weird. The next day, when Della and Perry get to the office, there's a gift for him. It's from Holcomb. It's the insurance that Perry requested, and it's a file from Sandhaven. It's the medical records for Noreen. And what the medical records say is that there's no way that what happened to Noreen and why she's in this state is because of a car accident. It was because she was choked and her brain was without oxygen for a long period. All this tracks because she has a mark on her neck. I mean, it looks like she was choked. As they're discussing the fact that while this file is nice, it's not exactly a smoking gun that they can use to get the boys off, there's a knock at the door and it's Ginny Ames coming to visit them. He quickly introduces Ginny to Della, and Della mentions how Ginny looks like a snack. As Perry and Ginny go off to have dinner, Della continues to dive into the file, and she notices that Brooks McCutcheon's belt looks an awful lot like the thing that would make the symbols on Noreen's neck. And that's probably because Brooks McCutcheon has this fetish of choking women while having sex with them. Although nobody other than Brooks and the women who have had sex with him know this. He's into some kinky stuff, we don't hate. But as Della burns the midnight oil, Perry goes on his date with Ginny. He discusses his relationship with Della, explaining that they've never hooked up. And while Perry doesn't say the reason why, he kind of just laughs off even the notion of it. And Ginny mentions the fact that she overheard Della say she looked delicious, which was a compliment. The date, though, goes really well. But the next day, Perry has to get ready for court again. And his first witness is Vincent Taylor, Noreen's brother. Perry starts weaving the tale together, pointing out that Vincent and Brooks knew each other. Brooks was actually a big contributor to Vincent's campaign. And then he catches Vincent in a lie when he brings up Noreen. Vincent says that what happened to her was a car accident. But the problem is, before he can truly point out that this is a lie, Della notices that he's losing most of the jurors. She suggests to Perry that she get up there and question Taylor. And it's a little unheard of because she doesn't have her law degree, but the judge allows it. So she starts getting up there and weaving together the story of what actually happened to Noreen. That Noreen worked in the same office as Brooks, that they hooked up, and that he choked her. And they have written testimony to women who have hooked up with Brooks McCutcheon that he does like choking women with belts while having sex with them. And he doesn't stop until he feels like it. This whole line of questioning is very uncomfortable for Vincent. I mean, he's talking about his sister here. But he does have to admit that, yes, that is what happened. He did just lie on the stand. Noreen is in Sandhaven because Brooks McCutcheon choked the hell out of her with a belt while hooking up with her, and now she's basically brain dead. That's the kind of guy that Brooks McCutcheon was. None of it exonerates the boys, but it just makes Brooks McCutcheon out to be a piece of crap that somebody would want to kill, i.e. like Vincent Taylor, for example. When court adjourns, Della is flying so high that the first thing she does is call up Anita and say, "I'm moving in." She heads to the boarding house, apologizes to Hazel, and then leaves. But Della's not the only one who feels good about this situation. So do the brothers, especially Raphael. Mateo is more reserved on it, but Raphael thinks it's only a matter of time before they're acquitted. There's no way they can lose now. He's so chesty about it that he starts mouthing off to the police, and that gets him thrown in solitary. But this is a really, really bad look for the prosecution. All that Sandhaven stuff with Noreen, they weren't expecting any of that. Milligan's getting desperate, and he calls Pete into his office, and Pete says, "Look, man, I can't get into his place." I don't know what to tell you. Mason isn't an idiot. He knows somebody's onto him. So Milligan decides to play Pete a little bit, saying, "Well, if you think that Mason's smarter than you, then okay, that's fine." And then he walks out, and Pete's not about to let Perry Mason think that he's smarter than anybody. So Pete goes digging more. This time, he goes to his office, and he finds the gun. Now, normally Mason would be there, but after what Holcomb gave him, he decided to go to see what Holcomb was talking about when he came to his office and said, "You got to come with me and see what I found." They head to the beach, but the beach isn't what Holcomb wanted to show Perry. It's to the side, near the rocks. He tells Mason that the McCutcheon ships would get loaded up in Long Beach. When Brooks was alive, they would then head up towards the port of Santa Barbara. Brooks was paying people under the table to unload the produce there. He then got in cahoots with Goldstein, but he can't say anything about it because Goldstein's dead. After Goldstein died, that's when all the ships stopped going up there. Perry asks Holcomb, well, if they're not traveling up there, where are they going? And that's when they come across it. There's a ton of seagulls ravaging boxes of fruits and vegetables. It's as if somebody just dumped this stuff off. But the thing is, it's all covered in oil. And that is what Lydell has been covering up this whole time. When Perry shows Della, though, she asks, oh, okay, yeah, he's covering this up, but what is he covering up exactly? And Perry doesn't even know. He just knows that this is shady as hell. Perry vows to find out exactly what it is so that he can help the case, but Della suggests that they just rest. They've got the jury right where they want them. They've got plenty of reasonable doubt. If there was ever a time to rest, now would be it. But Perry wants to dig deeper. He wants to find out what Lydell is hiding. So they're going to keep going. Although the next day when they get to court, there's a bombshell that's dropped. Before they can even call the next witness or decide if they want to keep going or rest, Milligan tells the judge that they have reason to believe Perry is keeping the murder weapon in his office. Perry gets really, really nervous about this. He knows it's still there. He knows this is pretty damning. And the judge is not willing to let him talk to Della about what to do. I mean, Della was looking into whether or not it was legal because the boys didn't give them the weapon. It was Paul who found it. So it's a loophole in the system, but they don't know if it's a loophole enough to get them off. Needless to say, Perry is sweating bullets, especially when the judge decides to go for a little field trip to Perry's office. Perry is forced to go into his office, open the safe, and reveal the murder weapon. They're going to have to perform ballistics on the gun, but they're pretty sure that they're going to find out it was the murder weapon. They're not going to put Perry in contempt just yet, but the judge makes it clear that that still is on the table. Before the judge leaves, he says, you both will be in my chambers at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. And Milligan makes some snide comment of, let me know if you need the name of a good lawyer. All night, Perry and Della comb through books trying to find a situation like theirs that they can use to keep them out of jail, but also to keep this news out of the papers, and thus the boys out of the noose. Really, though, it's just Della doing this, because all Perry can think about is who betrayed him. He starts thinking about who overheard what, and he comes to the conclusion it must have been Ginny. She's only been in town for a couple years. Maybe she was playing him the whole time. I mean, she did overhear Della say that she looked delicious. So Perry leaves his office and heads right to Ginny's apartment. He's pretty confrontational about it, and Ginny doesn't really know where it's coming from. Perry ends up storming out of the place when Ginny acts like she doesn't know. But even though in the court it's going bad, Paul continues to stake out that corner. He's still replaying what happened to Ozzy over and over in his head. The fact that he beat the hell out of him. Especially when he sees a boy walking down the street wearing Ozzy's shoes. Paul gets really confrontational with the kid, asking where he got him. And the kid just knocked him off of a telephone pole, that's all. But Paul scares the crap out of him. So Paul is trying to focus, but it's that memory of beating on Ozzy that keeps replaying in his head. So it's making it a little difficult. Although, he finally gets a stroke of luck when a car, fitting the description of the one that Ozzy described, comes up to the corner. Paul quickly goes to follow it, and that's when that same boy with the Converse sneakers jumps out into the street, and Paul gets distracted. He jumps out of his car, he chases after the kid, but the kid gets away, and so does the car. And Paul's left in the middle of the street, empty-handed. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry, it'll be up in a day or two.